Here I am. Bennett, rock me like a hurricane. Sorry, I'm on a lot of energy. My sleep schedule's been killed all to hell, so I'm trying to reverse it a little bit. So I have so much caffeine in my system right now. But anyway, I guess apparently you do want to see more of this. So I don't know what the runtime of this is gonna be, but whatever it is, blame yourselves. You asked for this. This is very much on you, and I'm just kind of using this as an opportunity to force myself to stay awake longer, because I really need to. So, I think before we move into this, probably not going to be that relevant here. A few things that sort of came up in the comments of the previous one. Like these, I should say, this is not a well-planned video essay or a lecture on the principles of character design. This is, I open a video game and then I yap about the characters for a while, right? Just so as we're all clear on the level of expectation that you should have here, if I were to try and do character design reviews for these as, like, a proper actual video, you'd get something a lot more well-reasoned, and certainly a lot more well-researched than what you're getting here. So, let's keep the expectations in mind. Another thing that I think is worth touching on, though, like, clarifying a little bit better, is sexualization as a character design tool, because that's something we touched on a bunch with like Black Panther, and like I brought up the whole Colossus and Black Widow. Is there is nothing inherently wrong. Like sexualization as a character design tool is completely morally neutral as a concept. There are contexts in which there is a moral dimension to it, but as a tool, it is morally neutral, right? It has uses. There are ways to use it that have a moral dimension, but the thing itself is just a means of storytelling, right? So when I say a character is sexualized, that's not a criticism necessarily, like on its own. It's not a thing. Like Black Widow is sexualized is not really a criticism of the character design. The criticism of the character design is whether or not the sexualization is used well to express the character, or whether it runs into some incoherence, or whether it runs into like counteracting other things that the character design is trying to do, right? And with Black Widow specifically, it's the thing of like, is this supposed to be like sultry, sexy, red-headed, femme fatale, seductress character? Because that's cool. That's a cool character to have. Or is it supposed to be hyper-efficient, only cares about the mission, long-range sniper character? Because those aren't necessarily really compatible at a baseline, right? Those are two characters that have different design needs, and so trying to mix and match them and not picking your lane on that one, I think it leads to weaker design. I think you could do more interesting things by focusing in on one of the things and really committing to it. And it's kind of the same thing, like the same problem I have with Widowmaker in Overwatch, is that they're having their cake and eating it too a lot with her, in that she's like, oh yes, we have taken this person and we have stripped away all of her emotions. She feels nothing. She cares about nothing. Only the kill, only the mission matters to her. It's the only thing that makes her feel anything. And then, also, she's sexy seductress, like deep low cleavage, hot sexy girl also. And those two things are like not inherently compatible, because like, in order for Black Widow to give a shit about being sexy, she has to have some feelings about herself, right? So, on the one hand, this character who's like literally... Because my expectation is, if you have taken someone, you have broken their psyche so thoroughly that only the mission matters to them, that the only moment they can feel even a little bit alive is when they're taking another human life. How do you express that as a piece of character design? Well, you probably create someone who looks like they literally don't give a shit about anything other than killing, right? Someone who does not give a shit about their own appearance, someone who does not give a shit about looking good, someone who doesn't really care about how anyone else sees them or how they look in the mirror. They just care about the kill, right? Either someone who's like dressing for maximum efficiency so that they can do as much killing as possible so that they can feel something, or else someone who's just fucking all fucked up, disheveled, ruined, like all kinds of just like that this person is not taking care of themselves. They don't shower, they don't style their hair, they don't do shit. Like someone who's completely fucked up because only the kill matters, right? And trying to mix and match those things, where it's like, on the one hand, she's a completely emotionless assassin who kills their target from a mile away, never even gets in close, never even talks to them, never touches them, anything. And on the other hand, also sexy, seductive, sexy, seductive, sultry assassin lady with the deep cleavage. Oh my god, and the makeup on point, and she's beautiful, and she's so perfect. And, like, those two things don't work naturally together. And I think a character like Widowmaker would be more effective if you settled in on a character design. Now, with Widowmaker, I believe, like, before they just threw Overwatch's story into the toilet at Blizzard, they did eventually get around to sort of writing some story for her where, oh, there's some hints here that Amélie Lacroix is still in there, like that her personality is coming back, or that some aspects of her were not actually quite taken out of her, and this idea that she was going to be an emotionless killing machine kind of turned out not to be true. Which, you know, fair enough. You can always retcon your way into a character design working better than it did. But it's that thing of, like, my position is that character design is a tool and it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be used seriously. Not just as a default that you don't think about, right? Like, it's like female character just sexy, I guess, because you don't bother to think of what else could you do to express who this character is, right? And superhero comics suffer from this, and they have for a very long time. All of culture does. It's like, it's not just superhero comics, it's not just video games, it's all of culture has this thing of, like, in the absence of anything else, the default, like the baseline default that is always just chosen because like no one wants to think about it, is powerful or sexy, right? These are like the two things. And the idea that, like, ugliness can be a specific character design tool that can do something, the idea that any other body type than skinny can have some kind of explanatory power, can have some kind of storytelling power, is just often not considered unless you are making the fat character. Then the concept of using a fat body just doesn't come up, right? Like, that tool, that thing which you can use to do storytelling is just, like, left on the floor because no one even bothers to think, to try, like, would this do something, right? And oftentimes the sort of hot, sexy, skinny, powerful, whatever, oftentimes that is the right choice. Like, oftentimes there are very good reasons to do it. Black Panther, for example, probably makes sense that the man is as shredded as he is, even if he could do with a little bit more cake. Captain America's super soldier serum, he's meant to represent, like, the ideal soldier and sort of be a subversion of the idea of the Ubermensch. Yeah, it makes sense that his physique is the way that it is. Does Cloak? Would he need to be particularly shredded? Well, no. Doctor Strange? No, and he isn't either. That's one of the things I quite like about his character design here, is, like, they didn't go, like, just go with the default and make him shredded for no fucking reason, right? Adam Warlock, on the other hand, is like, what, again, this is, I should also say, again, I am not that familiar with Adam Warlock's story. Maybe there's something in his lore, maybe there's something in his backstory that makes it make sense. But does he need all of this gym-shredded nonsense with his body in order to express who he is as a character? I would put a question mark at that. And then there's the other aspect of the character design, which is that character design in the context of a video game also tends to have a communicative function when it comes to game design, right? So you see Hulk running at you, giant, huge, mega muscles. You kind of understand, okay, punches really hard, melee character, probably really tough and difficult to kill. You kind of see that immediately. Black Widow, a lot smaller, a lot slighter. She carries a sniper rifle. You sort of go, okay, that's a squishy character who deals high damage, but can go down if I land a couple of good hits, right? There's a explanatory effect of character design in there as well that creates some biases and pressures towards using one body type over another, because it's not just about communicating the character's story, it's also about communicating, you know, their behavior in game, their capabilities, right? I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? Right. Just all of this is to say, the concept of sexualization is morally neutral. I get kind of tired and annoyed of people who sort of just hear the idea, oh, the character is sexualized, and just immediately jump to, oh my god, it's woke! It's the woke feminist, like all of that shit. Like, we say a word that sort of triggers this incoherent rage where people just go, oh, woke, therefore bad, evil. I don't want to fucking deal with you people in the comments, and if you comment, I will just block you, because I don't want to deal with you. I don't want to talk to you. Like, if you want to talk to me about anything in this video, kindly speak to me on the terms that I am talking, which is to say we're discussing the thing as a discipline of craft. I am not always right about everything. I am frequently wrong about many things, but I don't want to fucking have to deal with the fucking reflexive triggering of the gamer bros who, like, hear a keyword and just instantly their brains explode and they become incapable of handling a conversation about the concept of storytelling, right? So this is just 10 minutes of the video wasted just to say that up front. Because you asked for this. The amount of yapping is your fault. You're enabling me, so this is where we are. Let's talk about Groot. I should actually look up what the hell Groot looks like in the comics right now. Because, like, Groot has had a number of different variations and incarnations, as I recall, right? Because he's sort of been through the ringer of, like, various kinds of tree person. Like, did he not become, like, a sort of sentient planet or something at some point? I can't remember. But yeah, so, like, Groot is, like... What do you do with Groot, really? Right? Like, what can you actually sort of mess with Dear Groot? Because he is essentially just an ent, right? Like, he is Tree Man from the fantasy thing, but he's an alien from space this time. And what do you do with that? Like, how much can you really do with that to make him interesting? I quite liked the way that they did in Guardians of the Galaxy movies, where they really focused on, like, roots and entanglement and things like that. That's a way to do it. This feels more like they... Well, actually, let's look at his animation and his abilities, because... Does it really need to take that long before he does something? Okay, we are doing the vines and roots and sort of thing. Many people are saying this, yes. Does it really need to take, like, 9 seconds before he does something when I want to see an animation of his ability? But, okay, so we are operating with, like, roots and, like, lots of, like, entangled... What's the word I'm looking for? Woven! That's the word I'm looking for. Woven. Like, we're operating with, like, woven, entangled roots that sort of curl around each other, coil around each other, and form these, like, living structures. And I like that. I like the presence of mushrooms and, like, lichens on his body. I think that's nice. That's, like, a nice way to integrate more plant imagery than just trees and leaves. Outside of that, though, like, it's like, what do you do with that? Honestly, is like, I've seen some really interesting versions of, like, the sentient plant man monster thing, where, like, you imitate the shape of a head by using, like, various arrangements of flowers and things like that, where you bring in inspiration and influences from, like stuff that's just outside of the normal sphere of what we think of as a tree, where, like, you're operating more around, like, the visual language of flowers, lichens, mushrooms, things like that, to sort of widen the idea of a plant man. Ultimately, Groot isn't that character in the comics even either. Like, I think this is more interesting than most of his comics incarnations have been. Like, partly because, like, his character design in the comics, like, that's the thing about, like, characters in superhero comics, a lot of that is often informed by, oh my god, I'm a comic book artist, I don't want to draw all of these fucking details every single fucking panel and keep it all on model. Please make it simpler. Please, I'm begging you for the love of God, right? That is a pressure that sort of operates in the market of comics, is that artists have a tendency to be like, I need to be able to stylize and simplify this, please. Where you don't always want to draw something that's this detailed for every single panel of a comic, right? Unless you're Rob Liefeld, but in that case you have different problems. So, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, what I'm trying to get around to is that I'm not really particularly excited by this. He's an ent man. He's a tree. He's a man who was made of tree. And, wow, there sure is a lot of wood on him. I like the feet, like that they have this sort of almost like thumbs or toes, but they're tree roots. That's cool. Mushrooms, that's neat. I feel like there was more you could do if you wanted to make Groot like a specific, unique, interesting incarnation of him. More limbs, for one thing. Like, plants don't usually limit themselves to just, like, a humanoid shape. More legs. Give him a split tree trunk with, like, a hole down the middle. I don't know. More flowers? Flowers would have been nice. Like, you could have... Groot here is his, like, badass, like, dangerous, dark-looking... But, like, a little bit more of that. Like, a little bit more of, like, flowers and things that are soft and beautiful. Whereas most of his aesthetic here is, like, very hard lines and hard edges, which aligns with, like, the Marvel Rivals general aesthetic. I think you could have done more, like, with stuff like that to make it more interesting. But it's Groot. Like, he's supposed to look like Groot. He does. I don't know what the hell else you do with that. Here we have the Guardians of the Galaxy version, or that's the grown-up baby Groot that reincarnated out of the dead Groot from the first movie. I'm not actually 100% sure if they ever confirmed that they're technically the same person, or technically two different people, or if it's like a reincarnation of the same thing. Don't actually know. This looks more like a rock monster, ultimately. And that's partly down to the coloration, like the sort of white-gray bark that he's got going on, but also some things about... Yeah, like there's definitely more lichen, more root imagery, more green, more plant mushrooms, whereas the Guardians of the Galaxy one, which is created for the purposes of functioning in the MCU, right? Definitely just kind of looks more like a generic golem. Which, you know. And then we have the palette swap. We have some blue algae, I guess, which, I mean, okay, sure, why not? Yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling for it, but I just don't have that much to say about Groot. Aww. I do like that both of his MVPs are him, like, at the end of it, just kind of chilling. Just kind of hanging out, right? Like, not doing any particular violence. Just kind of like, yeah, I'm here. I am Groot. That is who I am. Man standing there normally. Lightning strike, gadosh! Normal standing man. That's, like, appropriate for him, I think. Oh, is that the baby Groot thing from Guardians of the Galaxy? I don't know. Hard to say much about Groot, because it's like, I wish that he was more interesting as a plant being, but then on the other, it's Groot. This is what Groot is. There isn't much to do with him. Hawkeye, on the other hand, admittedly, I have not kept up. Last time I read a Hawkeye comic, it was the... What's the artist? It was that recent run where Hawkeye is, like, living in an apartment building. It sort of focuses on his deafness. It had a really nice art style, like a really sort of simple... It delved really deep into his character, actually. I quite liked it. This is something different than that. Distinctly. And I don't know about it, man. Like, let me just... Okay. So this is literally just... Blah, 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 marksmanship, blah, blah, entire fleet, blah, blah. Distanced himself from the Avengers, setting off on a quest for vengeance as the assassin called Ronin. That's more or less the thing that happened in the MCU. Returned older and wiser, just in time to infiltrate Hydra's Erebus base and rescue the captured Winter Soldier. So, like, I don't know if this is what Clint looks like in the comics nowadays, but... Yeah, this is not very interesting to me. It's just tech armor. Like, it's just a bunch of sort of comic book nonsense, too many pouches. What does he even keep in those? Tech armor. Like, look at all the put text detail on the textures. So there's metal and plates and I don't know. As costuming, this just isn't very compelling to me. It feels very much like an attempt to turn Hawkeye into an edgelord, which is the same thing that the MCU tried to do with, like, Hawkeye. After Thanos snap, he becomes an assassin in Japan, and he has a mohawk, and and it's like, it's Hawkeye. It's the shoot people with bow and arrow guy. it's like I feel like he works better as a character when you kind of just go, yeah, this is basically a man with a bow and arrow. This is Robin Hood. This is like, and you lean into the silliness. He shoots trick arrows with stuff like maybe not as silly as Green Arrow gets sometimes, but still, I don't really know about this fucking samurai sword ninja mask ass. Look at this dramatic capes like over his shoulder because of he's a wanderer. He's a ronin. I don't know, man. There's 100 million characters like this, and none of them have ever excited me. I'm a dark avenger. I am angry. I prowl the rooftops. I protect the innocent. Like, yeah, cool. Like you and Five. It looks very 90s. I think really is the thing I'm landing on. This looks very 90s. Like the time period in comics where they just could not stand the concept of being goofy on purpose. Or anything being cheesy, like this wave of like powerful reaction to the sort of goofiness of the 70s and 80s. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, what am I supposed to take away from this, particularly? Like, he just kind of looks like half of a Mortal Kombat character and like an Overwatch OC who's like the long-lost brother of the Shimada clan, or fucking whatever. I don't really, yeah, I don't have much positive to really say here. It's just, it's that character. Was it called Freefall? Hang on, I need to fucking Google this. Because that was like one of them. Wasn't Freefall after the other? Oh my god, I don't remember. My memory is shot at the best of times. I don't think it was that one I was thinking about, but I may be wrong. Anyway, who cares? Who gives a shit? So this, to me, is a little bit more interesting. Not a lot, but, like, I like the somewhat more down-to-earthness of this, right? Like, yeah, he's got the superhero nonsense going on, but he is kind of just like a guy, right? I don't know about the sunglasses necessarily there. Like, they're striking, I guess, but... Like, I like Hawkeye as the normie, as the guy who's like, I'm just a guy who's real good at shooting bows and arrows. I like that as a part of the dynamic of, like, an Avengers team, as part of the dynamic of the Marvel comics, right? That he is just, I could just be an Olympics archer and win all of the Olympics forever, but I guess I'm doing superhero stuff because S.H.I.E.L.D. or something. Like, I like him as a representation of a reasonably normal guy. This is, like, closer to that, right? Like, he's got stuff, like, that stuff is clearly tools that he uses for something. The sword is still, you know, the sword is what it is. But, like, yeah, he's just got, like, a pants and then knee protectors on because he needs to, like, drop to his knees and shoot arrows or whatever. He wears shoes that, I mean, aside from the bright metallic purple, look like shoes that a person would wear. And then he has his incredibly tight muscle shirt and an Avengers branded quiver, right? Like, this, to me, closer to that normality that I feel like gives Hawkeye his charm when he is charming. And I will say, like, also, for Hawkeye specifically, having that extremely yoked, like very, very muscular upper body, that makes kind of sense, because archers are like this, right? Like, if you ever see, like, there's a fantastic series of photo shoots. I can't remember if it was Sports Illustrated who did them, but it's like a series, like, it's a bunch of naked photo shoots of a bunch of athletes. Nothing sexual particularly. It's like sort of what you'd call tasteful artistic nudity. But, like, I really like some of the photo shoots, especially of the archers, because you can see the ways in which the sport that they do influences the way that their body develops when you, like, do archery with traditional bows for, like, 20 years. Like, that changes your skeleton. Like, old-timey longbow archers used, like, you could literally tell from the skeleton of a person whether they spent their life practicing the longbow, because it distorted, like, the whole shape of their upper body in order to support, the strains and pressures of doing that. So I like the idea of Hawkeye, like, having like just this unusually massive upper body. Now, archers don't usually get swole in this way. Like, they don't usually get these bulging muscles. They tend to be very hard and very lean and like very wiry. Like, rather than this like sort of swelling, what are they called? Like traps and pectorals and stuff like that. But I like the idea of like highly emphasizing Hawkeye as someone who has like a very muscular upper body, just because of that's what he does with his life. And then there's just not that much going on with the legs, right? Like, this is a guy who kind of skips leg day by accident because he's pulling the string on this fucking thing all day and has a draw strength of like, I don't know, 4 billion pounds or whatever. But then his from the waist down, he's just kind of like normal athletic dude. I like that. Like, that's a more interesting way, like, again, that thing of using what the body type is to communicate something about who they are and how they live. I kind of like that. Like, that makes sense to me as, like, a design choice. And that's where it's, like, that's where the default thing comes into play, right? Because, like, it's interesting as a design choice to have Hawkeye be really, really fucking shredded from the waist up, right? But then the question is that an intentional design choice about Hawkeye, or is that just because, well, we make characters super, super shredded, especially from the waist up by default, because that's superhero physique, right? That's why that default is so annoying, because, like, it robs the times when an interesting choice is being made. If it happens to align with the default, you kind of go, oh, was that an interesting choice, or was that just because the default happened to line up with something that was interesting? It annoys me, right? Like, that's design should be intentional, not just, well, this is a superhero, therefore shredded, right? Let's see. Here he is working for the Wakandan Space Empire. Apparently, the Wakanda Space Empire is like a thing that was a thing in comics for like a decade ago. Doesn't surprise me particularly, but like, okay. Still weird that Steve Rogers would be working. Well, no, like, nothing's weird. Comics, like, the characters don't have consistent interior morality, really. It's contingent on whatever the hell the writer wants to do. I kind of dig the Power Rangers vibe here, in a way that I was sort of not really sure what to do with it with Captain America. Like, because it's like, oh, is this supposed to be, like, is this because of the dark and the red? Is he supposed to be, like, an evil version of Cap? Like, a more extreme version? Is this U.S. agent, was my thinking, right? Like, it's like, there was this Power Rangers vibe to it, because of the fucking ridiculous animal-themed suit and all. I just wasn't really sure what to think of it. But, like, in the context of Clint here, like, very much being a fucking Super Sentai character. Yeah, you know what, like, I can kind of dig that. I can kind of dig that. Like, if you're gonna have a silly a character with a silly weapon gimmick, making them a fucking Power Ranger, like, making them a Sentai, right, that kind of makes sense for me. Like, that kind of leans into the inherent goofiness of the thing and sort of makes it a little bit more sensible. Just checking for cake. Just checking for it. Did they again do the thing where... I mean, yeah, to be fair, the Sentai version is wearing, like, a skin-tight, like, rubber bodysuit, and these are pants, so I guess that makes sense. But still, it's it's genuinely a little bit funny, just like, oh, we have to sculpt the whole outline of the ass in this suit. But then he doesn't have one, right? Like, you get these lovely rendered curves down the bottom of his fucking ass, and then flat as a pancake. Nothing there. It's like, why did you sculpt it that way then? Why did you texture that so lovingly if it wasn't gonna be anything there to texture? And I would say, again, I like the idea with Hawkeye that, like, from the waist down, he's unexceptional, because all of his strength, all of his skill, all of his ability really lies in the upper body. So that, not, like, unlike with Black Panther, where I feel like he's sort of supposed to be like a specimen of like sort of peak fitness kind of thing, you can make an argument for, like, being caked up and having a fantastic ass being a part of that power fantasy to an extent. I kind of like that here. Like, here it's fine. Again, no idea of whether it's intentional or not, but, you know. Let's swap him over to his regular costume. Yeah, again, like, that could fucking be a Hanzo play of the game. Like, no problem. That feels more Hawkeye. Like, sort of falling from the sky at 4 billion miles an hour, dodging shots and, like, grabbing onto a wall. And somersaulting to shoot an arrow upside down. That feels a little bit more Hawkeye than Hanzo, I will say. Like, that a little bit more show-offy. A little bit more superhero, where Hanzo is more like, I am a samurai, like, heir of my father's honor, name, stuff, whatever. Yeah, that feels pretty Hawkeye. Yeah, and this is fully some anime shit, and that doesn't feel like Hawkeye at all, because he's using his fucking sword now. I was expecting him to, like, block the bullet and then turn around and, like, get ready to fire back with his bow, but, I mean, I guess we're just kind of doing him as a ninja here. It works with the tokusatsu thing, like, it works with the Power Ranger nonsense, but, yeah. Like, Hawkeye should kind of be about his bow, shouldn't he? I feel like he should. Let's see. Hela. Now... Listen, I have some feelings about Kate Blanchett as Hela in Thor Ragnarok. I have some feelings about it. I won't go into what those feelings are, just you know, it's that... She wears that costume. I like the crown here. Like, it is that, like, it is that sort of, I mean, I guess MCU took it from the comics, presumably, but it is that, like, Thor Ragnarok style, like, the crown with, like, the many upwards pointing blades and shards. I like the stylization here. I like adding the green as almost like something that's almost tattooed onto it. That's kind of cool. I like the cloak a lot. Actually, I like the cloak a fuck of a lot. That is actually... Oh, that fucking rules. I wasn't even seeing how smooth the animation was on that. Like, the flow of that, like, that texture flowing down into, like, this fiery billowing. That fucking rocks, man. That rules. That's very, very good. Very Hades. Like, it feels... Genuinely feels very sort of, Hades, Disney's version of Hades, the way that his sort of robes would billow out smoke. Like, feels of a kind with that a little bit. And it's interesting. So, like, Hela, like, much like any of the sort of, like, Norse gods in any Marvel, very little connection to the actual mythology. Hel, or, like, Hel, in Norse mythology is like, this is the realm of sadness and, like being kind of clammy and wet and miserable and just kind of sitting around going, oh, and, like, having your nails pulled out and then used to build a huge ship for Ragnarok. It's the realm of, like, being sad and miserable for all of eternity and kind of cold and feeling shitty. As opposed to the realms of, like, Folkvanger, which is Freya's realm of the dead, which is, like, just a giant, beautiful green meadow where you're safe and pretty much happy and it's springtime forever. And you're just kind of having a good time. And then Valhalla, which is, you know, eat, fuck, fight, party, kill all your friends, and then you rise again the next morning, you do it all over again, like eternal warrior, like the best rager anyone's ever thrown forever kind of vibe, until Ragnarok, obviously. Doesn't really have that much to do with anything that, like, Hela has got going on here, right? This is like, yeah, I mean, it's a superhero costume, right? And it is that thing of, like, I do look at characters like Thor, Odin, Loki, like, all of the characters basically in the Marvel version of the Norse pantheon, and I do kind of go, like, you could do a little bit more. Like, you could draw a little bit more from the actual mythology here, because sometimes it just kind of ends up, she just wears a supervillain suit, right? Like, it is just kind of a supervillain suit with not a lot going on, except she's the god of death, so therefore sharp blades sharp because of she kills you with the she stabs you with the sword blades. So like, look at all these blades and all this sharpness that's sharp on her because of killing with blade death, right? It's a bit like, oh, okay, is that what death is in sort of the version of the mythology that exists in the Marvel universe? Death is just sword? Death is just stab, stab, dagger, dagger? Is that the only thing that death is? Could we maybe express a little bit more about what it means to be the god of death through Hela's design? I guess not. And so, like, but it's also, the design is not really interested in expressing death as a concept, right? Like, because, like, in the same way that Thor's design isn't particularly interested in expressing the idea of thunder, right? And Loki's design isn't really, I mean, I guess we'll get to Loki. He's in here, right? Somewhere. Oh yeah, he's over there. It's not really about expressing deceitfulness or mischief, particularly as a piece of character design. It's much more about, like, it's big, bright, colorful superhero villain stuff, right? So this is just kind of, she's a bad guy wearing a bad guy costume, right? She's got the heels on because of like I said, like all of the criticisms I have here kind of apply to Cate Blanchett in Thor Ragnarok as well, I should say. I like that version of her for different reasons. Here I'm a little bit like, they're definitely going for, like, condescending dommy mommy vibes, right? Like, where she's like this sexy sort of, like, slightly dominatrix themed, right, murder queen with a bit of the cleavage out, like with the tight suit, kind of really feeling herself. She has that little, like the little stroking gently across her blade as she relishes the thought of, like, driving it into her flesh and penetrating it. Like, there's some of that in there. I feel like, again, it's that thing of, like, what's the age rating, right? Like, how much can they actually get away with here? Where they probably can't go much further than this, but, like, if this is what we want to do with Hela, right? Like, if that's what she's supposed to be, she's like stabby, dangerous, like, dominatrix, like, goth mommy kind of thing. Kind of could have gone harder with it. Like, could have shown a little bit more skin. Like, you have this aesthetic in her costume, right? Of all of these, like, sharp shapes and slices. It's like, okay, so have some of those sharp shapes and slices, like, reveal a little bit of thigh, or, like, maybe a little bit of midriff, or, like, have the dress be backless and then covered up with the cape. Like, all of these things you could do to make her more, like, alluring and, like, lean more into that, like, dommy mommy sexual power thing. If that's what you wanted the power fantasy to be, I guess this is probably as far as they could go. But the one thing I will say is I don't like the collar. I don't like the way that that collar interacts with her neck shape. The way that it interacts with her silhouette. Like, that, it kind of boxes her into... Again, on the assumption that the primary thing we want from her here is, like, she's supposed to be hot, dommy mommy, stabby power fantasy kind of vibe. This, like, turning her whole central body into this, like, curved triangle shape, I think it messes too, like, it gets in the way of what the headdress is trying to do for her silhouette, I think, and it makes her neck way too thick. I think that's really the thing that bothers me about this, is, like, this is, like, a very tall, very slender, right? Like, very sort of, like, not curvaceous as such. This isn't really a thick goth mommy by any stretch of the imagination. But, like, there's a lot of this, like, flowing, curved, S-curve kind of thing. And then you reach the top of her shoulders and you just kind of runs into a wall and goes, ka-tonk! No, here everything is, like, very, very bulky, very sort of locked down. And, like, the flow of the neck into the spine, into the hip, down along the thighs, that's a very basic part of, like, really, that, like, what she's trying to do with her animation, like, that sensual power design, like, giving her a long neck. Like, sort of in the same way, like, Bayonetta, for example. I think she's a reasonable reference here. The same way that Bayonetta has these legs that are just, like, a little bit unnaturally long, like, a little bit longer than actual legs would be, just to emphasize even more that, like, tall, slender agility I feel like here, the shoulder piece, like, it's a good sort of evil fantasy overlord shoulder piece, but the way that it thickens her neck, the way that it makes her top heavy in that way, I think that interferes with it. I think that sort of brings the flow to a standstill, and it's kind of awkward with the rest of her design. I think. Yeah. I would, like, have given, like, because you can use neck pieces like that, specifically, to lengthen a character's neck and get away with it. Like, you can lengthen a character's neck to be quite unnaturally long if you have, like, a good, elaborate neck piece to sort of justify it visually. This doesn't do that. This feels like it shortens her neck and makes it thicker. And that kind of doesn't work with the very tall, very slender thing that the rest of the character design has got going on. I don't think. That's just an impression, though. Like, something about that shoulder piece just doesn't sit well with me. Something something about what this bit is doing doesn't work with what all of this bit is doing. If you wanted to do something that was more aligned with what the shoulder piece is doing, you wouldn't give her, like, that skin-tight cat suit. You would, like, give her, like, armor, I guess. Like, actually, like, bulk her up a little bit, have some armor going on, some spikiness to it that would sort of, yeah. I think the shoulder piece is my big problem with Hela. Like, I think it's out of step with the rest of the character design. She's like a melee character, right? Nope, she throws it. Okay. Well, I mean, that makes sense with the MCU, I guess. Oh. So she's the Farah. Okay, I guess. You could do more with that. Like, if she's gonna have a floating down animation where she, like, descends from the sky, it should be like it shouldn't be like a hand held up, like, legs bent kind of thing. It should be like straight back, arms out to the side, like descending like an avenging angel kind of thing. Like, come on, surely. When Hela lands a final hit in defeating an enemy, she can instantly resurrect Thor, Loki in the respawn phase, or grant them bonus health. Okay, cool. So, cosmetics, let's see. Actually, let's look at the MVP for her default first. Oh, that fucks. That's pretty good. Like, sort of just stepping out of it. Hand on... Like, that serves. That's serving a little bit, yeah. Again, still don't like that shoulder piece. But okay, costumes. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Oh. So that's from 1966. Oh, that's why. Okay. It felt a little bit more like, oh, this is like some old-timey... Because, like, I haven't read that many of the 60s Thor comics. But, like, my memory of what they used to look like back then is like they took on much more of a sort of Wagnerian operatic ring cycles, sort of like, that's why Thor with the winged helmet and all that shit, right? I like the theatricality. Like, this does, like, with the mask and, like, the high collar. It does definitely have something of that 60s, 70s cheese to it. I kind of like that. And, like, here I feel like here, the silhouette of the shoulder piece, it kind of works better because it's not just skin-tight catsuit all the way down. Like, you have this loincloth thing. Like, the collar itself sort of helps extend these shapes out in a way where here, like, that downwards pointing thing, maybe that conflicts a little bit with all of the spikes everywhere else being, like, upwards pointing. It sort of has the opposite flow of everything else that points upwards, and then this sort of goes, oh, I'm drooping downwards. I don't know. Because this works a little bit better for me. Still, it's very cheese. It's very kind of silly. But then it's the... What the fuck is up with those shoes? It's the 1960s. I guess that makes sense to assign ethos for that. By the way, the whole crows thing... That's not Hel's thing. That's Odin's thing. Odin is the guy who has all of the crows. So, again, the mythology is far, far away. Let's see. The Empress of the Cosmos. I mean, yeah. And oh, wait, that fucks. That rule. That's really... Oh, I didn't realize... It's because she's translucent and there's like a fucking black hole inside her chest. That rules. That is very, very cool. I like that a lot. That really works. Like, if you wanted, like, Cosmic Empress character... No, yeah, like, that is good imagery to draw from. And I guess because she is, like... made of translucent glass, they can get away with sexualizing her a lot more. Like, they can get away with, like... implying a lot more because she doesn't technically have nipples and a vagina under there, I guess, because, like, upskirting her is not hard here. So I guess, like, because she's like that, you can see they still have the definition, like, they still have the outline of the breast. See, that's the thing I'm talking about. Like, if you wanted the character to be really hot and sexy, this is, like, more what I would expect to see on, like, the base version of her. Interestingly, the sexualization makes a lot less sense for this version of her, I think. Like, if the idea here is that she's... Are there jiggle physics on the little orbs in her headdress? Oh my god, there are. Look, they jiggle. Okay, I got distracted there. Like, if this is sort of the idea of her as, like, this cosmic embodiment of something or other, Empress of the Cosmos, like, uncaring... embodiment of entropy and decay, or whatever it may be, like a thing of no feeling, which is just a pure being kind of thing. The sexualization makes less sense there, I think. Like, that does less for her than it does here with, like, the BDSM dommy mommy thing. Like, not that it's a problem, it's just, yeah, the fucking black hole in the chest, like... That is really fucking cool as a visual effect. Like, because I thought it was just going to be a texture that was, like, painted onto her, right? But the fact that it's, like, a little rendered thing just hovering in there. I really, really like that. That's really cool. Also, like, the starfield inside the cloak. Quite nice. Good application of those effects. Don't know about the hair, but, yeah, whatever. And I don't know about the boots, either. This is one of those instances where, like, I think it would have been cooler if her leg, like, if there were no boots, and her legs just kind of extended down, and, like, she had those heels, like, literally just as part of her body. I think would have been cooler, and then you could do some metal accents across it, like the same thing they do on the side of her thighs here. Rather than, like, have her wearing boots. I think that might have been visually cooler. But that's just me speculating. Like, yeah, I don't think the sexualization works for the character here, but my god, is she hot, though. Like, that's a very... Like, the color scheme is pretty good. Like, the white against the, like, dark teal green. The gold, I don't know. Like, I can take it and leave it. Like, it could be silver. But... yeah, no, that's a very attractive design. Here we have the palettes, and there's the one that gets to be sexier. Okay, I guess they could get away with it. Like, not that much, but they could get away with showing a little bit more skin, apparently. I don't know that red is super great on her, though. Again, this is sort of the thing about, like, what colors communicate, right? And red has a tendency to be passion. Red has a tendency to be anger. Red has a tendency to be fire. Red has a tendency to be, like, wild and uncontrollable, right? And so it's often associated with, like, sexuality, passion, things like that. Green is more calm. Green is more in control. Green is, like, often when it's coded for evil rather than being coded for life, right? Like, it's often more insidious, more controlling. in its associations when it's coded for evil specifically. So I think that works better for Hela as a color scheme. I don't know that the red really works. That sort of makes her look like a berserker. Which, I mean, given the way that her hands look, that may be intentional. Yeah, I guess it's fine. Oh, that's pretty good. So are those supposed to be like dead Viking warriors? Is that why the horns on the helmet? Or is it more of a sort of a the Black Cauldron sort of thing of like these are generic evil fantasy warriors called up from dead? I don't know. But I like that, like her as a commander of armies, like summoning her minions forth. That's pretty good. Yeah, again, like, this feels a lot like this is supposed to be Hell, not as, like, goth, mommy, seductive, super hottie, but more like, this is an embodiment of the will of the cosmos, like, this is a ruler of the universe kind of vibe. And again, I don't know if the sexualization really makes sense for that. Like, what else could you have done that might have been more interesting than that, right? Yeah. It's fucking hot, though. Ooh, hang on. I need to see that again. Oh, I like that fucking... That was a good key pose. Dangle, 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 dangle. So I don't know that much about Iron Fist. Particularly. Like, it comes out of... Like, there was a specific era of Marvel, I think it was early 70s, I'm entirely wrong about that, probably. But there was a specific era of Marvel where they were really branching out into sort of like cashing in on kung fu media, kung fu, like, martial arts movies, Bruce Lee things, stuff like that, where they had like a period of time where they were really sort of pushing on that. That period also had a lot of unfortunate Orientalism because, you know, it's kind of inevitable for the time period, which is not to excuse it, just to say, like, yeah, obviously. And like it ended up often being kind of cheesy, and I'm kind of digging the mixture here, because like there's something like this logo on the chest, right? It's very Mortal Kombat in its way, right? Like this sort of stylized superhero dragon logo sort of thing. But then there's that really nice, what will you call that? Belt buckle, I guess? And like the braided rope, and like the sensibility of like he's wearing something that like looks plausibly like shoes that you'd use for martial arts. Like it is, I think it's striking an okay balance between like the really sort of cheesy magic kung fu nonsense that sort of forms the basis of the character's origins versus something that's like modernized and doesn't feel like it's just a Halloween costume. Like the fucking Ninja Turtle mask thing, the bandana with like the eyes on it. It's still a little bit there in like the sort of sillier. I think the balance is pretty good, actually. Like, he doesn't just look like a cartoon character. He looks like he could actually kick your ass. Right? He looks like he actually is powerful. Lots of props to the animators as well. Like, that fucking intro. Like, just that fucking first punch, man. And then that key pose at the end. That also does a lot to sell him, like, that his posing is holding strong to, like, no, this guy is, you know, king of the ass kickers, right? Like, this is... maybe he's a little colorful and bright and looks superhero silly a little bit, but, like, you don't want to fuck with that, right? I think the bandages around the arms, like, really does help a lot with that, like, really emphasizing that. I like the asymmetry between them as well. Yeah. Not bad. Not bad at all. This works pretty well with the Marvel Rivals aesthetic, I think. Huh. Swordmaster 20. So that would be the character origins, right? Because this is not the Danny Rand version. This is... what's he called? Lin Lee. Yeah, so he's like the latest Iron Fist, is he? Like, is he currently the Iron Fist? I know there was a child who was the Iron Fist for a bit. A little while ago. And, like, the mantle has passed to a lot of different characters. So I guess this would be his design when he was, like, a sword master. Prior to gaining the Iron Fist powers. It's like a sort of classic wuxia thing going on there. Well, maybe not classic so much, but, like, something that looks like contemporary wuxia style designs in many ways. A little bit of cleavage. Like, definitely clearly supposed to be, like, a good-looking, handsome, attractive man. Like, clearly is a design priority here. Like, not just in the sense of, like, oh, he's thin and shredded or whatever, but, like, that there's a priority in, like, this is someone who, like, women would find hot. I like the earrings. They're a nice detail. Why does he have earrings in this one? Aw. I don't know that I have much to say about it. That's just a cool costume. It definitely feels like the costume of a sword fighter more than a martial artist, I will say. Like, it definitely does feel like it's supposed to have, like, a sword in hand and, like, sort of be framed around that. Yeah, maybe lacking a little bit of detail from the waist down. Like, that's something I kind of like here, is, like, most of it is up here, right? Like, you have the dragon logo, you have the mask, you have, like, the crossover, like, where the vest reveals the other vest underneath it, or the suit reveals the vest underneath, and you have, like, the wraps around the hands. And then from the waist down, there's less there, but you still get, like, that gold detailing running down into some boots that are sort of fairly complicated and varied. This one may be lacking. I guess that's kind of why I'm feeling like there's a sword missing, because it really feels like part of that detail budget is supposed to be taken up by, like, a really cool sword that's, like, sitting on his hip. That's supposed to, like, fill up that space in the bottom half of the design. Maybe he has that in, like, an MVP version. Wait, is this motherfucker Riven? Oh, it's like the shattered sword thing. But, like, yeah. That makes sense. I kind of boss babied myself there a little bit. Like, guy who's only seen the boss baby. Getting a lot of boss baby vibes from this. It's like, no, like, Riven did not invent the idea of the shattered sword. And, like, manipulating the shards of that. That's very much a thing that's been around before. Let's see that one. Ooh, I like that. Like that, the flow with the dragon into the fist. Yeah, I like that. I don't know that like the flow of the whole sequence doesn't necessarily make sense to me. Like this, he starts, you look up at him from below. Like you start with like, he does that thing, then you're looking up at him from below, then you all of a sudden the camera pans up, then you're looking down at him from above, and then he jumps up, and then you're looking up at him from below again. Like that flow is maybe a little bit weird, but like the fucking animation on everything he does, like, damn, I need to fucking see this and like record this at like 144 FPS and like really see the flow of that, because like there's some squash and stretch happening. There's some use of flash frames here that I think is genuinely really impressive. Yeah, I'm gonna have to record these and, like, do a separate video about them, maybe, because, like, I think there's some really cool shit happening in some of these MVP animations. Like, there's some really cool cheating to the camera that's going on inside of these. Iron Man. Did you just say your own name? Did I just hallucinate that? Did I just hallucinate him saying, Iron Man? I must have hallucinated that. That clearly can't be true. So, Iron Man. Iron Man is like a little bit of an interesting bit of character design, right? Because, like, the whole point of it is that these are a bunch of different suits that he just puts on, right? That he modifies. Like, a big part of Tony, the point of Tony as a character is that he's always building new suits, right? He's always improving, he's always innovating, he's always experimenting, he's always doing new and different things with his Iron Man suits. So, like, the fact that the design is somewhat inconsistent beyond just its color scheme, that's sort of a feature of the character, right? That's something that makes sense as a piece of the character's evolution. So, like, I was introduced to Iron Man, I think, by the 90s TV show. Like, I am Iron Man, like, with Tony with the fucking long-ass 90s hair. And, like, that very sort of simple, like, ready-for-TV animation suit design. And then we sort of transitioned through the various iterations of the MCU, right? Like, with Tony creating these, like, more and more sleek and elaborate designs. And this sort of feels like, I don't know where this is supposed to be specifically in the lore. But this feels very much like a sort of the Iron Man suit as a second skin, rather than the Iron Man suit as armor, right? Like, compare and contrast with the Iron Man suit Mark I from the first Iron Man movie, right? Which was a suit of armor, and which was based on the version of Iron Man that existed in, like, the very earliest comics incarnations, where it really was, like, this is a man in a suit of armor. This feels a lot more like this is an extremely shredded man with a fancy mask and some really elaborate body paint, right? And to an extent, that makes sense. Like, the Iron Man suit as second skin for Tony is a thematic area that, like, that the character has explored before. And it does bring up the question of, why would Tony? Really? Again, I know I'm talking about their asses a lot, but it keeps coming up, right? Because so much of the suit, right, like, you have all these hard edges and all this technological, like straight lines and, like, geometry, and then here he just found the time to create, like, really curved armor plates for his his fucking ass, I guess. Very cute, very funny. But yeah, like, I think there's a tension here that I don't know that this design entirely navigates. Like, do we want this to be a suit? Do we want this to be something that Tony is putting on, like, outside of himself? Or do we want it to be, this is the Iron Man suit as a full extension of his own, like, biological body kind of thing? Like, are we playing with this sort of lightly cyborg transhumanist elements of the way that the Iron Man suit is sometimes considered on Tony? That he's, like, has this thing of, like, as an extension of his own body. I'm thinking of Iron Man 3, right? In Iron Man 3, they play a lot with, like, the dependency and the codependency between Tony and his suit, right? He runs to the suit because it's the only place he can feel safe from his panic attacks, and the movie is very much about, like, taking Tony out of his suit and, like, seeing, can you still be a hero when you don't have access to the fucking laser blast, rocket flight, superpower suit all the time, right? Like, it's sort of about navigating the tension between the man and the suit as a thing, and ends with him symbolically blowing up a whole bunch of his suits and sort of reclaiming the idea that he's a person before he's, you know, a weapon. And, like, in terms of character design, like, because looking at this as a character design, I would assume that this is a version of Tony who is, like, become even more cyborgized by his suit, right? Like, it's always kind of there with the whole, like, he has the thing in his chest, the generator that powers the suit, and like he can't live without technology, quite literally. Like, he's kept alive by technology. Technology is a lifeline for him. Because, like, this to me feels like, on the one hand, it wants to be that idea of a second skin kind of thing, but then there's bits, like the really chunky bits on the top of the suit, the way that the central repulsor, arc reactor, whatever they're calling it, is, like, very clearly marked out as a thing that's, like, almost separate from his body, rather than being, like, integrated into and a part of it. That, like, I feel it's a little unclear what it wants to be on that front. Does it want to be the coolest Iron Man suit ever, or does it want to be, like, the final evolution of Tony Stark as a, like, sort of cyborg transhumanist project of a person? Because, like, genuinely, like, the ass, the legs, the way, like, also the way that it, like, clings up the neck, and, like, this is more of a mask than a helmet, that all to me says cyborg integration, right? Like, that all says, like, a full union between man and suit. And then the bulkiness of the arms, and the chunkiness, especially of the chest repulsor, that to me feels more like, oh no, this is an armor suit, this is a thing I'm putting on, this is the thing that's external to myself. Which, I don't know, like, I should say, all of this warbling, all of this yapping I've been doing, this looks fucking cool. Like, this is a very cool version of Iron Man. I like the sleekness. I like the flow that exists through it, the way that they've integrated, like, the angular tech aesthetic into the thing. I really like the fucking flexing of, like, the little rocket pods or whatever it is on his back, and the way that, like, he ejects electricity from, like, that shit is really fucking cool. As a robot suit, like, as a fucking cyborg robot thing, it looks good as hell. It really does. I think there's... The suit could maybe have a different balance of geometric to organic in its shape language, but, like, it looks good as hell. It's just, I'm not really sure what to take away from this as, like, the suit as an expression of Tony. What's it trying to say about him? Like, I guess it could be trying to say that he's in a halfway stage where he's sort of halfway integrating himself with the suit, but he won't admit it to himself. That's, like, the suit should be a piece of character storytelling. Like, what the suit looks at, like at any given time should be a clue to the audience about how Tony feels about his identity as Iron Man, right? Like, it should be an expression of his internal state, to some extent. Let's see. Endgame Tony, yeah. Yeah, I don't really think that looks that much like the Endgame suit. Like, beyond the color scheme and, like, the texturing, like, the little things, like, that, the Endgame suit, to me, I remember that as being decidedly less like a skin suit. Maybe I should look it up. Iron Man Endgame suit. What did he look like there? Oh, there's a lot of fucking AI shit in these fucking search results. God damn it. Fuck off. I just want a fucking screenshot from Avengers Endgame, you assholes. Oh, yeah, no, like, at the end, right, when he had the gauntlet, like, that's, a lot of the suit had been stripped away, and it was, like, more of a techno-organic thing. Okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. It was more techno-organic, I guess. Oh, fuck me running. There must be a better way to see what the fucking Iron Man suit looked like in Endgame. There we go. Yeah, okay, yeah, Endgame was more techno-organic. Okay, I guess I'm wrong. I am just wrong about that. Fair enough. They were already leaning into the techno-organic thing at that point. Superior Iron Man. That was a weird storyline. I think, this is where I'm mostly going off of what I remember from the videos that Sir Superhero did about it. But, like, wasn't that a thing they kind of abandoned the concept of it halfway through? Like, that Tony gave everyone in the world access to, like, incredibly advanced personal technology, and then, like, I'm gonna charge a subscription service for this now that it has become necessary for every human on Earth because I am evil Tony Stark now. Ah. Which, again, is where, like, again, presumably this is taken from Superior Iron Man. Let me actually look at... Fuck it, I have Google. Well, DuckDuckGo. Because the Superior... Oh, God, more AI bullshit. Fuck off! Yeah, because, like, that was my memory of it, is that Superior Iron Man was, like... They were fully going for a... What if Tony Stark was evil Steve Jobs, right? What if Tony Stark was evil Steve Jobs? What if Iron Man's suit but Apple, right? Like, that was fully what they were doing with that particular storyline. Like, they were doing the classic, like, what if tech billionaires were evil? What if, right? Can you even imagine such a horrifying world in which tech billionaires were bad? And this kind of doesn't look that much like that. Like, it, first of all, the gray kind of, like, it lacks that Apple iPhone smoothness to it. Yeah, I don't know that this is a great translation of the Superior Iron Man suit, frankly. Like, because it was supposed to be kind of nakedly a riff on the Apple aesthetic. As a signifier of, like, cold, heartless evil. That's not really present here at all, I think. Well, like, at least... If the state of his ass is supposed to express how he feels about his body, we can definitely see that he's, like, less interested in his own sensuality in this one. Hang on, just for the fun of it. Since that's the theme. The theme of these is apparently ass. Just superhero ass is the main theme of these videos now. Yeah, no, like, he's got the diaper bit on here. Which again begs the question of, like... Why did you sculpt your ass like that in this suit, Tony? Why was that important to you as a part of the design process? Ah, that's funny. So, Jeff is perfect. Low-key. Now... I'm just kidding. But, well, I'm not fucking kidding. Jeff is perfect. Jeff... Jeff is perfect. There's not... What the fuck else are you supposed to do with Jeff? There's nothing else you could possibly do with Jeff. Right? Did he start... Did he start as a Gwenpool joke, or did he start as a Deadpool joke? I think it was one of those comics that he came from, right? And he's a joke character in that way, right? Like, he's What If Shark, but also Puppy, right? It's a sort of... It's a very one-note joke in concept, and it just got expanded because it's such a fucking appealing design. And I've seen these around on the internet, like long before Jeff was a thing. People were doing, like, cutesy, what if we mixed the characteristics of a shark with the characteristics of a cat, or characteristics of a dog, right? Like, so that's not unique or new to Jeff the Land Shark particularly, but, like... But it's like, people have been doing it a bunch because it fucking works, man! He's got the little shark tail, but he wags it like a dog? And he's all wiggly? Hey, he's perfect! Fuck off! You want me to criticize this? Die! You hateful monster! No! Jeff is perfect! Jeff is, objectively speaking, perfect. And I do, to be a little more serious, it's like... This is kind of a thing I'm talking about, like, when a character design knows what it's about and it leans into it. Jeff the Land Shark knows what it's about, right? This is the cutest, most stinking adorable little shark puppy you have ever fucking seen in your entire fucking life. Every part of his character design is devoted to making him cuter as a land shark puppy. From the fucking little, like, the collar with his name on it in, like, a sort of Sharpie-esque cutesy font, to the big giant eyes, to the huge mouth, to the tongue, to the waggy tail, and the jiggle physics on the tail. Every part of this design is working towards the singular purpose that Jeff the Land Shark is the most adorable thing you have ever fucking seen in your entire fucking life. And it gets there. This is what commitment to a concept looks like in character design. As opposed to character design where it's like, well, we want her to be cold and heartless and not have any feelings, but also we want her to be extremely sexy and sensual and hot. It's like, okay, but what if you picked one? Like, how much better and more committed could the design be if you took one thing? Well, it could be this. It could be this committed. It could be this beautiful, perfect, lovely, wonderful, cute, and adorable. And I will say, I don't blame anyone who finds this fucking annoying. Right? Like, Jeff the Land Shark, he is designed to be the most stinking, distressingly, disgustingly adorable thing you've ever seen in your fucking life, right? And a lot of people are not going to vibe with that. A lot of people are going to get annoyed by that. He's like, like that shit, right? And that's fine. That's the price you pay for fully committing to something, is that anyone who doesn't quite vibe with the thing you're doing is going to get turned off by it. But, like, I just, as a piece of character design, like the fucking 90s ass pattern on the little collar, and it's pink, which is like a terrible contrast with the grayish blue, like gasoline color of the rest of him, but that makes it cuter because the mismatch, like, has that little... Yeah, no, like, perfect. Absolutely fucking perfect. Absolutely fucking perfect. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to, right? You have to give Jeff a fucking outfit like this. Sure, why not? Stupid, adorable, right? Commitment. Commitment. 100 billion% commitment to the bit. And I like the way... Oh, that's interesting. I like the way they've rendered the fuzziness, right? Like, you see those little floating bits that are just allowed to float out there, and then they've, like, added these little multicolor, like blue, yellow. I think I saw a purple one at some point, or was there... no, red. Like, to just add extra fuzziness to the damn thing. Yeah, no, stupid adorable. And this is just a fairly basic palette swap. This is less good because the yellow just doesn't work as well as a strong contrast against Jeff. And I like Jeff more when he's a little bit more colorful rather than gray. But it's like, it's Jeff. He's perfect. Fuck off. Yeah, the thing going down over his face. Yep. That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. That's wonderful. Excellent. Yeah, like, if you don't vibe with Jeff, you're not wrong. Like, you're not wrong to be annoyed by this. You're not wrong to feel like this is way the fuck too much, right? This is way too cutesy. This is way too pandering to that sense of cuteness. You're not wrong. Like, those are accurate observations about the character design, but also, it is being exactly what it wants to be, and it's being that thing maximally, without any compromises or excuses, and without ever backing off from it, without ever being too cowardly to commit to it. And that's what good character design is supposed to be, like, at least to my eyes. Oh, I kind of like that. Again, I need to fucking record these, because, like, there's some shit going on with flash frames here that's like... I like the expressiveness of his face as well. Like, the gleefulness that he has in it. But yeah, again, very little connection between anything going on with Loki and actual Norse mythology. Like, the fucking hornet helmet thing is... I don't know where they got that, really. Loki has no particular association with hornet animals. In fact, more than anything, Loki is a shapeshifter. He's a trickster and a shapeshifter. he wears a lot of different animal costumes. Like, one of the most famous stories about Loki, well, one of the most famous stories about Loki, he shapeshifts into a horse. He is, by the way, Sleipnir's mother, who is the Odin's horse, Sleipnir. Yeah, Loki is Sleipnir's mother. Don't ask. But in one of the most famous stories about him, he shapeshifts into a fly. In another one, he shapeshifts into a seal. He shapeshifts into a salmon at one point as well, and a hawk multiple times, but never, to my remembrance, anything like a goat or a ram or anything with horns, really. So I don't know where Marvel Comics really got that from, like where they decided to pull that from. Now, Loki as a character, as he exists within the Marvel context, right? Like this self-aggrandizing, I want to be king of everything, I am like a supervillain who's scheming to take over kind of thing. For that, I quite like the big fur collar. Because it's like, it's a lion's mane, right? Like, it's like I'm putting on like this big, huge, imperious, like, I'm king, I'm powerful, I'm big, look at me. Like, so that I think works quite well for him as an aspect. And it also has that little tiny bit of connection to the stereotypical Viking aesthetic, which is to wear a ton of furs all over everything. Vikings did, broadly speaking, not wear a lot of furs. That wasn't really a part of Viking fashion. Basically, every single part of the sort of popular media image you have of what a Viking warrior looks like is wrong. It is incorrect. Like, I don't care which part. Unless you are a scholar of actual Viking history, you're wrong. I'm sorry. Whatever idea you have about what the Vikings look like, you are incorrect. Like, they did not tattoo their faces that we have any particular, like, knowledge of. They certainly didn't do chin lines. They didn't shave the sides of their heads all of that often that we know of. And they mostly just, like, wore shirts and pants for the most part. And they weren't particularly shredded either. Like, they didn't spend a whole bunch of time lifting weights and getting, like, really fucking swole. That was not really a Viking pastime. The Viking pastimes were farming and fishing and hunting and sort of like generally engaging in the labor that is necessary to produce the necessary amount of calories for a human being to survive, for the most part. And then occasionally, some people who had like the wealth and the ability to be warriors would go and raid a place by ambushing people, killing them really quickly, and then running away before any any proper armed resistance could be mounted to them. That's the Vikings. Like, large part not that brave as a culture, and the few times that Viking cultures really tried to muster an army and like invade and fight a pitched battle, they had a tendency to lose, because that's not really what they were good at. That's a very abridged, simplified version. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to be like, well, I've read a million books about Viking history, and that's very reductive. Yes, it's reductive. It's a reductive view of it, but it's a reductive view in opposition to the reductive view that you get in most Viking media, which annoys the piss out of me, because like most people of the Viking age cultures were not warriors and didn't spend all of their time prosecuting blood feuds and raiding. They did the same thing that everyone else at that tech level did, which is trying to make food enough to not starve in the winter. Like, that was the main thing. Anyway, fucking hell, tangents. I have not taken my ADHD meds today on purpose, because I might be running out of the prescription before I have a time to fill it. So that's also part of why I'm like this. Let's see. What were we talking about? Right. Loki as, I want to be the king, I want to take over, I have a aggrandized view of myself. For those purposes, having the giant horned crown, that makes sense. Like, that's something that's like I have a big crown. It's a huge crown on my head. It's very large. Please look at my enormous crown because I am the king. Therefore, I have the crown. Like, that's that kind of character design. The gold, by the same token, makes sense as something that Loki would wear as like an expression of who he is, because like, yes, gold, see how I glitter. Like, that makes sense as like an expression of this like self-aggrandizing personality. Same thing with the big cape, right? Like, a big cape is a dumb thing to wear into combat, but again, if he wants to be, I am the king of Asgard, actually, the rightful king, I am the whatever, a big giant cape makes perfect sense for that. So like, yeah, absolutely fuck all to do with it with the Norse mythology Loki, but as an expression of the character that he is in the context of Marvel, it's pretty good. Now again, I think Loki was a kid a few years ago. Like, he was turned into a child as like a moral lesson thing, and then he learned to be a good guy who like I think in part as part of a reinterpretation of the character after his enormous popularity in the MCU, they tried to gentle him a little bit into like an anti-hero sort of character a bit more. So I don't know what the current state of his lore is, that he's still like a self-aggrandizing, but that's certainly how he's animated and presented here, is very much that version of him. Yeah, Loki sees his chance to take the throne for himself. Yeah, that's very much that guy. Here we have Loki Season 2 Loki. Hello, not quite Tom Hiddleston. I'm curious. I'm really curious, because like that doesn't look like fucking Tom Hiddleston to me. I will say. And I'm curious, is that because they couldn't get the likeness rights? Because that's been one of the very funny, sort of awkward things hanging over a lot, like video game adaptations and a lot of like Marvel media after the global dominance of the MCU and the popularity of the actors who portrayed the characters. Is like, here's our Marvel game with dollar store Chris Hemsworth in it, and also great value Chris Evans, and like where they kind of, and sort of kind of Mark Ruffalo if you squint, right? Where these actors whose likeness rights are really fucking expensive, and they kind of just have to go, here's something that looks vaguely kind of like them, but not quite. I wonder if that's the same thing here. Like, that's why he doesn't look like Hiddleston particularly. Because they just couldn't really quite get the likeness rights to him. Again, I haven't actually watched Loki Season 2. I loved Season 1. I just never got around to Season 2. I think a whole bunch of other stuff got in the way. That's usually how it goes. I do like the loafers here, though. I like the fucking loafers. I like those a lot as an expression of the character design. Because they're fucking loafers, man. Right? You'd kind of expect boots, so you would expect, like, some like, the ostentatious shoes or something, but like no, just like look like sort of like probably like fine Italian leather loafers from some expensive brand or whatever, but just loafers, just like casual shoes you wear around the house. Yeah, like a nice little character design. I don't know how much it's trying to express. Like, I don't really know where Loki went in Season 2, so I can't really assess that. But like, I like the simplicity of this. Like, because the simplicity also aligns a little bit, like, more with, like, that version of Loki, right? Like, because he has sort of progressed beyond his delusions of grandeur, and he's become a more balanced person at the end of Loki Season 1. So I like this as, like, this simpler, like, just fabric sort of swaddled around his body in some interesting shapes, and then the big horn crown, I guess. Which, does he wear that in Loki Season 2, or is it just there because they want to preserve the silhouette? I don't know. And then Frost Giant Loki. Okay. Like, if you're gonna do a palette swap, that's a pretty solid way to do it. Oh, hey, and the palette swap also gives him a little bit of cleavage, kind of. It looks that way, anyway. That's sweet. Yeah, no, like, as a palette swap goes, this is pretty good. Like, just sort of changing all the color temperatures to be colder. Except the gold, obviously, but... yeah, you can see that in the fur on his shoulders, for example, right? You can see how it changes from going a little bit more yellowy, a little bit more warm, to being a little colder and a little bit more gray. Yeah, that's neat. That's pretty good. Let's look at his MVPs. Yeah, I like the expressiveness on him, too. I like that he has, like, the big, wide, sort of evil mech bad guy grin, that he, like, is able to do that. That's good. That should be there. Multiple images, deceit, deception. Sure, that makes sense for Loki. And then Glorious Purpose, Loki Season 2, I don't know what the hell's happening in that show. I guess he sits down, pulls on some things, and then he looks at the camera. Okay. Is that because... oh, is Loki Season 2 him, like, putting the time streams back together because they didn't want to do the multiverse anyway? I don't know. Was Loki Season 2 the one where they tried to fix the fact that Jonathan Majors turned out to be an abusive piece of shit and he couldn't be Kang the Conqueror anymore? They kind of must have had to, right? I don't know. I want to see his abilities, though. Mystical Missile... heal allies, damage to... oh, he's a healer, actually. Okay. Shapeshift into a targeted ally enemy hero. Use all their abilities except their team up. Oh, that's cool. Oh, I guess Punisher is War Machine in this version of him. Fair enough. Regeneration domain. Use runestones to create a magical field. Interesting. Huh. Does that act automatically, or does Loki have to cause it to do things? Swap with the illusion. Backstab. Yeah, backstab makes sense for Loki.
Time to vanish.
Okay, cool. I like this. Like, that's an effective expression of who the character is, at the very least. And that's another row, and it took about the same amount of time, maybe a little bit less. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm okay with that. Only 2.5 more rows to go. If you keep enabling me, I'll keep doing it. And you'll keep having to listen to me yap. You'll be forced to. Government agents will arrive at your door and make you... I have to promote my merch store, don't I? I do. Crowdmade.com. Collections. TBSkyen, that's me. Hello, I have merch. You can buy it if you want to. I do have to promote it because of it, you know. It costs a little bit of money to commission designs and do things for that, so I do have to promote it. There's some cool things. I am wearing one of the hoodies right now. It's soft and warm and nice. The mugs are cool. You can get big ones. You can have lots of stuff in them. Please buy some. Or don't. I'm not the boss of you. But, you know, give your family some of my merch for Christmas. It will be a funny joke. Probably. Don't do that. Don't give your family a real gift. Like, don't give them some shit from a YouTuber. Like, that would be mean of you. Kind of funny, though.